And share with us today. We know that we can never understand even a fraction of what you went through, but I know that the story that you're going to tell us today of your experiences will at least give us a glimpse into these terrible times.
I'm grateful that the children come and listen to me after 50 years war. After 50 years. Anyway, I come from Poland, from a small town called Aleksandrow Kujawaski. Aleksandrow was not far from the German border. That's why, unfortunately, we were hit straight away as soon as the war broke out. As a child, I had a very, very happy childhood. I was the only child of Sarah and Jacob Krakowski. My father had a small textile business, and being an only child, I was not short of anything. I was going to school where nuns were teaching, because that was the only private school.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. That was the only private school in the town I was living where nuns were teaching, and I was the only Jewish girl, one Jewish pupil there in that school. Forgive me, I'm a little bit shaky when I start talking. And I get also emotional, so please forgive me. The nuns were very nice to me. I never felt any anti-Semitism at all. They were treating me very nicely. I am still in contact with two Polish friends, school friends, who live in Warsaw. Of course, I had every year my birthday parties. My father took me skating. He taught me how to skate. I had a little bike. I was not short of anything. In 1939, when the war broke out, the war was declared 10 o'clock in the morning, but 8 o'clock they were already bombing our little town. We hid ourselves in the cellar, and unfortunately, our house was hit. Just the corner of the house was hit, and the bomb fell the next door, and all the people got killed. We came out from the cellars all black, and all the windows were broken. Everything was really shattered. We got frightened, and we started going into the fields to sleep in the night in the fields, because we are afraid that the bombs will come again and we get killed. About a week later, when the Germans came, they came and arrested my father. Why did they arrest him? A lot of Germans were living in our town, and as we had a little shop, people used to come and talk to my father, and of course he was talking against Hitler. But because he was talking against Hitler, they arrested him. My mother's brother was living in the same town, and he was dealing with a lot of German people, and he went and he got my father out of jail. A few days later, they start evacuating the Polish, poor Jewish people. They were just holding little parcels, and we did not know where they're taking them. So my father got frightened, and he had a brother living in middle of Poland, a town called Lubraniec. So he bought a cart and a horse. We loaded up the cart, and we went to my father's brother. I forgot also to mention to you, as soon as the Germans came, first we had to have yellow bands on our arms, and we had to walk in the middle of the road. We are not allowed to walk on the pavements. When we got to Lubraniec, the Germans were not there yet. We stayed there for about a week. The Germans came, and the same story. We had to walk in the middle of the road, but we had to have stars, yellow stars in the front and a yellow star in the back. But it was still not too bad. We could still buy some food. We were not hungry, we were not cold. By the end of the year, which is 1939, there were placards on the walls that people who do not live in Lubraniec must leave Lubraniec. My father hired a slate with a driver, and we were loading up some of the stuff, and we were going to Warsaw. Before we got to Warsaw, which was capital of Poland, before we got to Warsaw, we stopped in a town called Kutno. In Kutno, we had some Polish friends. With their daughter was very friendly with me, and they gave us shelter. They gave us shelter. After about 6 weeks staying there, neighbors came, called my father, and they said that he is endangering their lives because they were hiding us in their place. So my father went to town in Kutno. He had to cross a railway tracks before he went to town, and just on the edge he found a Jewish family who had a shop, grocery shop, and they wanted us to live with them. So we moved to these people. Here we still were not hungry, and we were not cold. It was not too bad, but we still had to walk on the middle of the streets. It was about February, March or February. In the night, a knock to the front door where the shop was. The family's name was Kronzilber. Mr. Kronzilber went and opened the front door, thinking that the Germans came to search. They usually searched and took some stuff away, and they went. This time they didn't search. Our room was the last room, and when Mr. Kronzilber saw what was going on, he came quickly to my father, and they both hid out themselves in the yard, because usually the Germans didn't touch the women, but they started always first on the men. But they came to our room. I was lying there with temperature. I had the flu, and so my mother said to me, "Run." I am in my nightdress, I have no shoes on, and I start running, and snow was very high because in Poland we had very severe winters, and I started to run to the Polish family called Lebiedziński, where we were staying for 6 weeks there. Just before I was crossing the railway track, I could hear screams. They caught my mother, the two Germans, and they start beating her. She should call me back. My mother called me. She said she didn't want me to come back. But I went back because I could hear how they were beating her. They took me to the kitchen. They tore my nightie off me, and some of the jewelry which we had left was pinned on me. Was all scattered, and I thought, oh my God, they don't want anything, they just want something else. They put me on the bed. They didn't rape me, but I'm going to tell you what they were doing. In the meantime, my mother screamed in the streets, and one man who used to come to the shop to buy grocery, he recognized my mother, and my mother told him, he was just coming from work, he was working on the railway station, and he recognized my mother, and my mother told him what's happening. So he says to her, you come back, go back, and I call somebody. When my mother came back and she saw what's going on, she took a knife and she wanted to stab the German, and I sat down, I said, no, because he didn't do anything, they didn't do anything to me, please don't. And in the meantime, this man whom she saw on the street, he called the police, and we could hear German voices. So they left me, and they arrested them. What did they do to them? I don't know. But that was my first terrible experience with the Germans. I was very ill afterwards. I went to stay with my mother's cousin who was there also in Kutno. They came also from Aleksandrow, but they were staying in Kutno for 6 weeks. Then I went back. In May, 2 assessments came to the Kronzilber's house. They were arresting prominent Jewish people, and the Kronzilbers, unfortunately, were also prominent. They arrested them and they arrested us with. They put us in a tobacco factory. They were sending us a soup a day and a slice of bread. They're doing all sorts of things to have excuses to pick somebody up and to kill, like putting a piece of soap or something, bits and pieces somebody should take. But nobody did, because we were scared stiff. There are 200 people just lying on the straw there. One day, assessment came and they called a name out. He was a jeweler, and they asked him, "Where have you got this soldier's jewelry?" So he says, "I left everything there. I couldn't take anything with me." Because he accused that a German soldier was a thief, they just shot him in front of us. And they took him away with the clothes and everything, with the blood everywhere splashing. After about 12 days staying there in that tobacco factory, we were lying just on the edge, myself and my parents, and my father was a stouty man. They picked up my father. There were 6 assessments. They taught him to undress, to dance, to say some Jewish prayers, and there are 3 of them on one side, 3 of them on the other side, and they're pushing him like a ball from one side to another, kicking him, beating him. And then they took a gun out and didn't shoot him, but they shoot next to his ear and bamboozle him. And then they throw him to us on the straw. We were already happy that my father was still alive. We stayed there for about a fortnight. They woke up us in the night and we start marching. They put us in 5s and we start marching. They took us to a sugar factory where this factory was not in use since before the First World War. People from Kutno were already there, and they were allowed to take what they could. They made little carts, and they took all their belongings, what they could, with them. We didn't have anything, but they shared with us. They gave us a bed, they gave us a bedding, and all sorts of things. Now, in this sugar factory, when it was raining, it was so much rain, water, and we had to stand on the tables or chairs. It was terrible. First was not too bad, because they were bringing bread, and we could have bread and potatoes, and if somebody had money or something, they could also probably get a bit of milk or a roll or something. Because one day my father came without his wedding ring, and he brought me a bit of milk and a roll. I noticed that he didn't have the ring, my mother didn't, and I knew that he brought it for me. But in this camp, it's become very bad. We didn't have no facilities at all. People start starving, ill. They stop, they close the gates, and they start throwing bread over the fence. Who could catch it, got it. Who didn't, they didn't have it. But one day, they were calling our name, a gendarme with a piece of paper. Now what happened? When the Germans used to come to a town, they used to choose about 4 or 5 Judenälteste, elderly Jews. What that meant, that these Jews were in charge of giving work to the people. What we should do, of course, it was forced labor. We didn't get paid for it. And my uncle, my father's brother, was chosen in Lubraniec. When he heard that we are in that camp, because we're now talking about beginning on 1940, don't forget, it's still 1940. He went to the Germans and told them, and they gave him the permission to get us out. And we went back. He took us by train right up to Lubraniec, to my uncle's doorstep. Now it started again. It came the Day of Atonement. They come to the Jewish homes. They took all the praying books. We had to carry them into the middle of the market, and they were burning them. And they took the rabbi, and he had to pull a cart with stones. It was not easy. It was not easy at all. In 1941, it's difficult to get in what really happened every day. But every day something else was happening which was frightening us to death. You were living all the time in fear. If they're knocking to the door and starting to search your place, it was really, you lived in fear all the time. In the beginning of 1941 was again a placard on the walls outside. All the men have to assemble in the marketplace. My father had a brother there, of course, and the brother had 2 sons, so they also went. And I never saw my father again. What we got to know, because we had a card from him, 1 card, that they sent him to Fort Radziwiłł, which was not far from Poznań, and they were doing labor, some work. They had to walk for a very, very long journeys, walking miles and miles. My father got ill with his legs, something, I don't know, so he was in the kitchen peeling potatoes, which was good, because when you work in the kitchen you had a little bit more food anyway. But suddenly we don't get any letters, we don't get any, nothing from them. And I still don't know till today where my father was sent. If he was sent to Treblinka, if he was sent to Auschwitz, I don't know. And 3 months later, we had placards again on the walls. All the women have to assemble in the marketplace, and they send us to Lodz Ghetto. Lodz is in German, and Łódź is in Polish. You know what is a ghetto. They surrounded few streets with wires, electrifying wires, and put the people there. When I got to Lodz Ghetto, on the platform I could see there are 2 women there with white overalls. And I heard that they are taking people to work in a children's hospital. So I went over to them, because I could see my mother was absolutely helpless. What am I going to do? I have to become now a father, a husband, and a daughter. And that time I was, 13 and a half, getting on 14. I went to these women, and I begged them to employ me in this hospital. So they said, a child will look after a child. I said, I'm strong. They took my father away already. I was crying, I was begging them. And my mother is so helpless. I have to work. How am I going to live? And another thing, you see, when you were working in the ghetto, you got a soup. When you did not work, you did not get a soup. And that was very important. You get a ration, you had 1 bread a week, and whatever, sometimes you had a bit of oil, a little bottle, or some margarine, or a few potatoes, or a few beetroots. You had rations, but bread was once a week a bread. They actually bent down and they said to me, okay, come here and there and we employ you. Now, where do we live? You come to a strange place. There were special organizations where they're putting people with other families. They put me and my mother with another woman and the son, which was very, very difficult because he was maybe 3 years older than myself, and you are living in one room with a young man. It's not very easy. But when I got through the town, through this ghetto, and I could see people already lying on the streets, dying, dead, skeletons, children, terrible. The next day, I went to this little hospital. The place was called Marysiniec. There were 2 blocks. One block on one side of the road, and the other one block on the other side of the road. On one side, there were children treated of boils, and the other side of tuberculosis. They put me on the side where I was treated children for boils. Of course, I didn't treat them. I was just washing the floors there, washing and doing things, helping. I mean, I was not a doctor or anything, helping only what I could do. One day before I was going to hospital, eventually I found a place for myself and my mother, just to be on our own. So I had 2 beds there standing, and in the middle we had a little table and a cooker and 2 chairs, and that's it. I found also a job for my mother, because if you didn't work, you didn't get no soup, so she would be starving, in a kitchen, which was fantastic. And I'm working in this hospital, which I was not short of anything. It was not too bad. I had my soup, I had my bread, it was okay. Suddenly my mother got ill. She got ill, they took her to hospital. When they sent her back from hospital, she was paralyzed completely on one side. So, when I was going to work, I had to leave 2 chairs next to her, one with a bedpan and one with a little bit of food, because I was working all day long. I couldn't come and feed her. Of course, I didn't get no soup from her, so I spoke to the director of this hospital, to this lady, and I said to her, can I have an extra soup for my mother? And they gave it to me. One day before I'm going to work in the hospital, they're closing the streets because the Germans are coming and evacuating people from the streets. What am I going to do with my mother? She can't walk. I've got to go. I was wearing a uniform, a hospital uniform, so I could move around. I had to carry her on my hands because she was like a skeleton, and put her in a ditch in the garden, praying to God when I come in the evening she'll be there. She was there. I took her back. And she was terribly ill. One leg was like little worms going. It was terrible. I was helpless. I knew she needed food, which I couldn't give it to her. Anyway, I was still working in this hospital for another month or 6 weeks. One day 2 lorries came, and they start loading up the children into the lorries. And we were wearing like long overalls, and these poor children, like they had a feeling that something going to happen to them. They were hiding behind the overalls, didn't want to go into the lorries. But we were afraid also they shouldn't take us, and I mostly was afraid if they take me, who's going to look after my mother? It was terrible. Afterwards we found out they gassed the children in the lorries. Then I had to find myself another job. I was working in a I got a job in a factory where they were knitting sweaters, socks, and tablecloths for the Germans. You see, a ghetto, Lodz Ghetto was one factory. What I mean one factory, we had to do hats for the soldiers, we had to do uniforms for the Germans, we had to do shoes for them. That was Lodz Ghetto. Everything was produced in the Lodz Ghetto and we didn't get no paid. It was money, ghetto money, which for the ration was just enough to pay for the rations what we used to get. Now, I'm not having a soup for my mother again. What am I going to do? We used to do very big tablecloths for the German women. They used to come to the factory there, they used to choose a pattern and we used to work for them. Now, these women, a lot of Jewish women, their husbands was working for the Germans direct. They also had to figure that they are working, but they didn't do any work. So girls like myself, which didn't get any food for my mother, I had to do the job for them, and they gave me the ration of the soup for my, do you understand? She couldn't work because she was ill and I had to have soup for her. So we used to take the work home and do it all night for the other women to get this token for the soup. Excuse me. But it was not enough just to sit all night and work. So some of the girls were working during the working hours in the factory, and one of them was caught. One of them was caught, and they would not give her the soup. So we strike. We didn't want to work. Either you give her the soup, or we're not doing any work. So they didn't want to give her the soup, and they kept us there for about half a day. Then they called the police, and they arrested us. They arrested us, and they put us in jail. And usually in jail, from time to time, the roll commander used to come. And they used to take us and send us off, which now we know it was Auschwitz. Before we did not know. We thought they were sending us to work. Thank God they did not come. But I went over to the office and I said to them that I've got an ill mother lying there. All day long I was not home. Would they help me? So they gave me a policeman, took me to my mother, and he even helped me to chop some wood. And I made from peeled potatoes like a cutlets and fried on water, and gave her to eat, gave her something to drink, and then knocked next door to the people, and I said to them, could you please give my mother something to drink the next day, because I knew I'd be going somewhere, I did not know where, but I said to my mother, don't worry, I'll be tomorrow back. The next day, they put us again in fives and start marching us towards, it was still the ghetto, but like, we were still under wires, but it still was outside, it was fields, and there were barracks. There were barracks. What we had to do, we had to pack components for heating up aeroplane engines. It was like a chain work. First we had to, first we sat in the room and we had to assemble the things, and then was like a chain work. It was a box and everyone had to put something in the box. And in the end of this chain was standing a Gestapo man or SS man to check if everything is there. And I was working there for quite a while. I went to the director and I said to him, I explained to him the situation, what I was with my mother, and he allowed me to have a soup. And during the lunch hour, I ran through the field, which the frozen ground was, you know, like not straight, which you could fall very easy. When I had the soup, I never fell down with the soup. I gave my mother the soup, and I come back quickly. When I was running back, I could fall about 3-4 times, but with the soup, God was with me. I never fell, just to take the soup to her. So God was somehow with me all the time. And I was working there. Everything was fine and dandy. In 1943, I was about just over 2 years in the ghettos, thriving with my mother there. I'm just telling you the things in a few minutes, but can you imagine how I had to suffer for 2 years? Standing in the queues for a bit of bread, for a bit of things. It was terrible. I had to do everything myself. I did not know anybody to help me. I didn't have a father, I didn't have family, I didn't have nobody. On a Sunday, they never ate it. So on a Sunday, and actually that place was already raided, because on a Sunday, that particular Sunday, I went to another house, another place, and I took some flour out, and I brought it to my place. I mixed it with some water, made a little fire, and made it a little like bread or whatever you call it, and put it to bake. As I was putting in, the door opens, and 2 SS men stay in there. Oh my God. Before they used to come there as well, when I was working, so my mother used to say that my daughter went for an ambulance to call and they used to leave her, but here I was there. I just stood in the door and I said, Mama, God is with us, and I left her. Until today, I don't know what happened to her. If they killed her there, if they took her somewhere, I don't know. They took me, not only me, but a lot of people. It was probably about September. The sun was still shining. To a platform. There were wagons, cattle trains. As we were going into the cattle trains, they gave us a loaf of bread and put us in these cattle trains. In the middle we had a barrel with water, and the train started going. As the train started going, the barrel was going backwards and forwards, the water was splashing everywhere, and we are there like sardines. I cannot explain to you the stench, the horror in this train. How long I was in this train, I don't know. But we got there, and I still don't know that Auschwitz existed. I did not know. I did not know a place existed like that. I thought they said taking us to work somewhere. I was so ignorant. Eventually we got to that place, which was still dark. It was dark. They tell us to get off the trains. Men separate, women separate. Can you imagine? The mothers screaming when the sons were taken away, when the husbands were taken away. It was just terrible. And everybody had like a rucksack. I had always a rucksack ready in case. And I had this rucksack. I liked the best when they used to say, oh, this luggage will come with you afterwards. Anyway, when we got to this Auschwitz, actually, the Jewish people were sent to Birkenau, which is about 1 or 2 kilometers from Auschwitz. Out to Auschwitz were sent prisoners of war, Russians, Italians, English, whatever, and they used to burn them there, 600 a day. How did I get to know? 6 years ago, I went with my husband back there, because these crematoriums are still standing. The crematoriums were in Birkenau, where Jewish people were burned, they were demolished. I think the prisoners, soon after the Russians came, they started to demolish. They don't want to know. You don't want to know what happened, you see. You push it behind you, like I did for 48 years. I didn't want to talk about it. Anyway, they start putting us, funny enough, in fifths. But with me in the train were two girls whom they saw collapsing because I left my mother. I was so terribly worried. I was so ill. I felt sick from all the sides of my body. And they taking sugar, and they were giving me sugar to revive me. When we got to Auschwitz, you had to go through a gate. Assessments are standing there, and one person goes to the left, one person to the right. They selecting you where you should go. And these girls, before I went through the gate, were still giving me the sugar, and I went to the right, which not knowing really what that meant, but I went to the right. They put us in fives again, and they counting us non-stop, counting us and counting us. We start walking a little bit. Then I can see barracks. One from the barracks, a girl comes out. She has no hair. She has no shoes. She wears a dress, such a short dress. So I thought maybe one of the barracks, they're keeping people who are mentally ill, not thinking that in about 1 or 2 hours I will look exactly the same. They took us to a very, very big room where they told us to undress ourselves again. Of course, there were only men there, the assessmen and the people who work in the camp, in the white and blue striped pajamas. Of course, we don't want to undress ourselves. So start out beating to undress ourselves. So we undress ourselves. And then we had to walk like making a circle, walking around. And they were still picking us up, who had a little boil on you or who didn't, was very thin. They still picking up these women and taking them away, which we know now they were taking them to the gas chambers. After that, we not dressed. They taking us to another place where they tattooed us, shaving us everywhere, giving us a shower, and gave us a little dress. And they put us in barracks. In barracks we had bunks, and 5 girls to a bunk. We didn't get any blankets or anything, just raw, nothing there. In the morning they used to give us green water to drink. Then they gave us soup, water, and in the evening they gave us a slice of bread. They used to wake us up 4 o'clock in the morning. 5 o'clock we had to stand outside, put us again in fives, waiting for the Germans till about 10 o'clock when they fancy coming and counting us, whatever weather, if rain, snow, or sunshine. Can you understand to live like that for nearly a year? I still think God was with me because I don't know how I survived. I really don't. I'm talking to you, but do you know, I do not believe myself that a person can go through it. I can't. I can't believe it, that I went through it. The girls are collapsing on the sail uphill. Not everybody could withstand so many hours. Eventually I collapsed as well. And they sent me to one of the blocks was made as like they call it an ambulance, not a hospital, but as an ambulance. And that was the time actually when we had bombing, and we thought the Allies are going to bomb Auschwitz or Birkenau, whatever. We didn't care. We wanted to go with them, but with them together. By the way, when I go to Birkenau, I forgot to tell you, it was all lit up, and we couldn't understand what is it. That was burning bodies, and the chimney was, the fire was coming out through the chimney. And the smell, you could smell it, but you couldn't really imagine what they were doing. You couldn't. Till I found out afterwards what it was all about, when I was there. Then they sent me, I was in Lager C. I was in Lager C in block 30. Then they sent me to Lager B, where there were only EU people, and from there they used to put them into the gas chamber. I don't know, the Blockeltester, which was a capo. In one block was 1,000 women, and you had a Blockeltester, a capo, who's supposed to be looking after us. The block was a long, narrow, and in the middle of the block you had a chimney, which was about 3/4 of a meter high, built from bricks. That's supposed to be a chimney to heat up the place, which was never heated up. But when the Blockeltester used to come, she used to only walk on the chimney, and she could see us from the top, what was going on with us, how we are behaving ourselves. When I was in this block, Lager B, this capo there, I don't know if she felt sorry for me, I don't know, but she sent me back to block Lager C. When I was Lager C, one of the girls told me, you know what, Abram, your cousin's friend is coming to this block C. 2 end blocks, men used to come there to work in Lager C. Of course, we were not allowed to leave the blocks, only when we were taken to the toilet. And the toilet was 1 block, and you had a very big hole, and that's why the dresses were getting shorter, because we used to tear the dresses to wipe ourselves. That's why the dresses were getting shorter and shorter. Anyway, so one day I took the plunger and I left my block, which was number 30, and I went to the end of the lager and started calling his name out. He was not there, but his brother was there. He was very surprised to see me that I'm in Auschwitz, but that's how life was. It was no choice. And he said that he will hand his brother Henrik to my block to see me. Henrik came next day. He brought me a kaftan, a little overall, a scarf for my head, though the hair was already growing a little bit, and clogs. That is the Dutch shoes from wood. And socks, which was his socks, which miles too big, but that was good. Then I could move from one block to another, looking that I'm a cleaner, I'm working, and that saved me. I don't know if you heard of Dr. Mengele, who was the man who was experimenting on women, or of course also sending them to the gas chambers. When let's say I was out and I could hear him that he's in block 30, I didn't go to that block anymore. I went somewhere else. That's how I mingle about to be so many months in Auschwitz. Otherwise I would be sent already a long time somewhere. Anyway, because you see, from hunger, some people get thin and some people get swollen. I got swollen, so I looked very good. Then I was staying in block 31, which we didn't have bunks, and 1,000 women were sleeping on the bare ground. There I met a girl with whom I was in Lodz Ghetto working, who still is alive, and she does live far from me in England, here. So she can vouch what I went through, because she really comes from Lodz, and she was with her family in the ghetto. But anyway, but one day, one night, all the women, 1,000 women, started to fight with each other, which was terrible. Because when you sleep, you start knocking, or with your leg, or with your hand, and that's how they start fighting. And this blockhead, this capo, comes with this beautiful night dress, with the badge, and walks on the chimney, and I was just on the edge, and she grabbed me and she gave me a beating. So I said to my friend Bella, I said to her, Bella, whenever Mengele comes, I'm going. I can't fight anymore. I can't. It's enough. I can't stand it anymore. A few weeks or whatever, Mengele came, and I went. You had to undress yourself, stood in the front with 2 SS-men. He takes you by the hand, show you the front, the back, and you go out. You go out, or actually first we had to go all 1,000 women on one side of the chimney, and one by one we were going out. You had to undress yourself completely, holding your clothes on your arm, and he stands there with the 2 SS-men and looks at you. Where should you go? On the other side of the chimney or out? Now you don't know if the other ones who go on the other chimneys are going to be safe, or the ones who are going out. Which one is going to the gas chamber? So you hold your clothes and you're looking behind, who is coming behind you. Anyway, of course I didn't go to the gas chamber. The one who went on the other side of the chimney went to the gas chamber, otherwise I wouldn't be here to tell you my story. Now it's another thing. We don't know where we are going. We're leaving our clothes and they're taking us to a shower room. Now what's going to come out from the showers? Gas or water. So we're holding ourselves, praying to God. What's going to come out? We shiver, we're frightened to death. Of course water came out, because if it would be gas I wouldn't be here either. Can you imagine our feelings, how we felt? Then they took us and we got some clothes. So the woman who was giving me the clothes, she says to me, you know, you're very lucky, you're going to work. I said, oh, that's fine. So they gave us dresses, they gave us cloaks, coats which had red crosses on the back. And I asked if she could give us something for our heads, and she gave us as well. That was summer actually when we went. And they took us in nice trains, we felt like we were princesses, to a farm, a very, very big farm, where we had to dig anti-tank trenches. Can you imagine, if we have been the workers already, what was happening in Germany? That is 1944, October, September, something like that. So you can imagine how we felt that we were the workers. No, I think it was more, no, June, July. It was still really warm. And we lived in the barns. I was actually staying in the barn where they used to have cows. And we were 1,000 women, 800 Hungarian Jewesses and 200 Polish Jewesses. How do I know how many? Because they took us to work 100 100, 100, 100, 100, and then we said 10 hundreds, so it's 1,000. And they used to choose one between us, one woman, to look after these hundreds. Anyway, what I must tell you also, what saved me a lot, is my singing. I used to sing very nicely, which I don't sing at all now. What I mean is, that Henrik, when he brought me my clothes, he told the couple that I can sing. Couple of times, she woke me up in the night. I had to sing while she was inviting some friends, men and women, and they were dancing. Then they went to another room, and was full of food everywhere. So I put everywhere, wherever I could, the sandwiches and the cakes. When I went back to the block, I used to give to the girls. And the same actually was happening in working camp. It's not that I was woken up in the night. I was just singing, and a lot of, they were Volksdeutsch, and what that means, they were Poles who become Germans, and they were looking after us there as well. So some of these Poles was just having on a guard, he used to call out, "Oh, Barbara, sing this song," and then he sent me a piece of bread or something. And everything was necessary in this respect. People were, to save their lives, they're doing a lot of things. And with me was my singing. Anyway, it came winter. Of course, we couldn't dig, so they were blowing up with blowers, with dynamite, the trenches, and we had to finish them off with, how do you call these? How?
Spades, shovels?
No, this, you know, the spikes, like a spike, you had to, picker, yes, with pickers. And then we stayed there in this farm. It was after Christmas, because we had to sing to the Germans carols, and we had bread for it, so which was lovely. And after Christmas, I think it was end of January, they woke us up, and we starting what they call it, the death march. Why was it called the death march? If a girl, a woman, fell while we were walking, she was straight away killed. Before we start walking, there were a lot of girls who were ill there, couldn't walk. So the ones who could walk, we had to have a blanket. Oh, by the way, in Auschwitz for winter they gave us blankets. I forgot to tell you. One blanket to a girl in winter in Auschwitz. Four girls had to hold this blanket, and the ill girl who couldn't walk, we had to carry. We didn't have the strength to carry. So, and in the end, we stopped somewhere, we had a wagon. They put the girls, ill girls, in about 3 wagons. When we got somewhere, it was near a forest, they told us to push them into the forest, and they killed them all. You know, it is very funny how you just say kill them. It's so easy to say it, but it was terrible. A heartbreak it was. They didn't give us anything to eat. We are only living on snow. I think it was about a fortnight where we were staying in a barn for the night. The barn was in a forest. And around the barn, I could see, because for winter by us, we done the same thing, bury potatoes and all sorts of vegetables. So I thought to myself, this is a fantastic place to hide, because must be something there to eat, and we could hear already shooting and bombing. The Russians were already coming. So, and the barn was from wood, and between the wood you had spaces. So I was one of the youngest ones, and the woman covered me deeply in the straw. When the gendarmes or the assessment were taking the bayonets and trying to see if anybody's hidden, They couldn't find me, but that Bella, whom I'm talking about, they did find her, and she'll end up in Bergen-Belsen. But I didn't. I could hear a woman from the other side of the barn is crying. I cannot walk anymore. If you want to kill me here. I don't have to be killed on the street, kill me here. But he left her. So I went over to her in the night, spoke to her. Then I went down. The earth was frozen so much. With my bare hands, I got the earth out, and there were potatoes. We are living on raw potatoes for 10 days, raw potatoes and snow, but we couldn't anymore. Our stomachs were like that. And we thought, we have to go down. We have to. We can hear bombing and shooting, and they're still not there. So we came down in the barn and started walking towards the village. When we got to the village, a woman was standing there and kneeling on a fence. And Irma, the woman who was with me, she was speaking very good German, because really she originated from Germany, but her parents were born in Poland and they sent them to Poland back. So I said, ask her for water. Don't ask her just ask her for water. Maybe she'll be kind and she'll give us to eat something. So she asked her for water. The woman turned around and she went back to the house. But we're going still more into the village. We can smell cooked potatoes. They were cooking for the animals, for pigs, for I don't know. And I said to Irma, let's go inside there, because a lot of Poles were working on farms. I'm sure they will help us. And that was true. They let us in, and we put everywhere where we could the potatoes, but they were cooked potatoes, not raw potatoes. And as we start putting everywhere the potatoes, 2 policemen, 2 gendarmes were standing there, and they arrested us, because the woman probably sent them. They arrested us, and they were trying to take us to the next town. The town was just below. Suddenly, aeroplanes came, and they start bombing this town, and the town is on fire. So the gendarmes, they left us, they ran away. So what we did, we went through the fields back to the barn. Now we've got boiled potatoes. They must be another week or something, they must be coming. We stayed there for a week on that barn. We went through the fields. We didn't go through the main street, but somebody shouldn't see us. And we stayed for a week, and the farmer came with a dog. The Asian barked so long till we had to come down. And they arrested us again. They arrested us again, and they were taking us from one place to another. I don't know, I do know, this is very fainty for me. I don't know when that happened but we landed up by a woman she had like a boarding house, a German woman. We were properly closed. I don't know. I think, I know how it was. They were taking us from one town to another. And one gendarme asked us, who are you? So I looked at Irma. Irma looks at me. So we said, we are Poles, not Jewish, Polish. We are working on the Polish-German border in a camp. The Russians came. We didn't want to be freed by the Russians. And we ran. And our papers are there. Anyway, they believed us. And from one place to another, they left us in the middle of the town. Just left us. So what we did, we went to one of the places, one of the houses. You see, the Germans were running away. They didn't want to be freed by the Russians, because you see, they knew when the Russians found them, they also done the same thing what they were doing to the Russian people. So we took some clothes, and we dressed ourselves up, and somehow we ended up by a woman who was having a boarding house. So we were cleaning there. Of course, we didn't say who we were, We were cleaning there, we were, you see the hair was already growing, it was not so bad looking, and one day 2 assessmen came. We were absolutely shivering. We had to serve them with a meal, and that time we found out, because we could hear when they were talking, that Roosevelt died. We nearly died ourselves when we heard that. And from there, again, there were placards that all the Poles have to, all people who don't belong to this town, they have to leave the town. In the end, somehow we got on a train. We went to a labor exchange, and we said to them that we were Poles. They sent us to a farm. We worked on a farm about 2 to 2.5 months, and the Russians came. When the Russians came, they wanted us to take whatever we can from the Germans, but we are still afraid, because when we were working in this hotel, in that boarding house, that was not far from the Odra, the other side of the Odra, on the German side, and not the Polish side, but this side. So they said, they used to come, the Russians, they used over the river Odra, and they used to rape the women, and they used to go back, because they didn't have the order to go further. And that's what we were afraid. But they stayed already. Eventually, after a week, we saw the war was over, we could hear on the wireless, and we got a cart and a horse, and Irma had a case of clothes, and I did, and we started going towards a town called Legnica. Legnica, which was before the war Germany and now belongs to Poland, because the borders are shifted now. And there was not easy, because we didn't have no shops that you could buy food or anything. I got a job in a town hall as a secretary. Irma became very ill, and she was at home, and I was earning 1,500 zloty a month, and a pair of shoes costed 8,000, so you can imagine what life it was in Poland soon after the war. But we used to get a soup where we were working in the office. And one day I had to run in the night looking for doctors for Irma, and I went to the Russian hospital, and they sent me 2 doctors for her, and they helped me to get her better. Then I went back to Poland to see if anybody is alive. Mainly I went to the Lodz, where the ghetto was, thinking maybe I could see anything here or anything about my mother, which I couldn't. And as I was standing there waiting to the office to be open, one of the girls with whom I was working in the working camp was standing with 3 men talking, and she started introducing me to them, and one says, Weiss. I said, Weiss, have you got a brother called Ignaz? She says, I'm Ignaz. That was Irma's husband. So they looked after me till I come to England. You see, I have family in England. My father's oldest brother came to England before the First World War, and he brought over after the First World War his parents and his sister. And that's why I come to England, remembering more or less the addresses, and London NW10, W11, and W10. I did not know, I just put on the envelope all these things and the surnames, and my aunt got the letter. And that's how I got to England. And when I was working in the town hall, one day English reporter came, and I asked for an interview, and he spoke German. I couldn't speak English that time. He spoke German, and I explained to him as well, and he put me in the telegraph here as well. So I came, my aunt sent me papers, and I came to England. After I came to England in 1946, at the beginning, like Easter time, 1948, I met my husband, who comes also from Poland, but he, when Hitler came, he ran to Russia and joined the Polish army under the British command, and that's how he got to England. I've got 2 sons. And I've got 2 grandchildren. Unfortunately, my life is still not so very easy because my older son suffers with multiple sclerosis and my youngest son suffers with nerves. Unfortunately, about 5-6 years after the war, I had a nervous breakdown when my little boy was born, my second boy, and he was put in a special nursery because I had to go to his hospital, and it did play him up all those years, till 11 years old. He would say to Mommy, you won't forget to collect me. When he came to hospital, he didn't recognize me. It was very tough for me now as well, unfortunately. I hope you understood what I told you, that my English is not so perfect, but I'm trying my best. And thank you very much for listening to me.